This video will cover 4 factors that majorly influenced the onset of World War I. Collectively, we will be introducing the effects and influences of militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism in an effort to convince the audience that this war came about by the cumulative impact of these factors and not the supplantation of any one factor over the others. Militarism in World War I. Militarism can be defined as an ideology that promotes using military force, either defensive or offensive, to protect national interests. Ergo, militarism was involuntarily intertwined with both nationalism and imperialism during World War I, as patriotism and colonization of foreign lands were profusely apparent at the time. Thus, we can say that militarism was a necessary premise for any national pursuit. However, its rise preceding the onset of World War I greatly contributed to the devastation of this ambiguous war. Following the Franco-Prussian War of 1866, German unification in 1870 leading to the formation of the Second Reich, and the American Civil War, the major European powers and America all began militarizing at unprecedented rates, connoting to an armaments race underway. New technologies contributing to military strength and strategy were being produced with a rise of funds allocated for this purpose. Weapons with unparalleled firepower, as in the past, such as tanks and machine guns, were produced and coupled with trench warfare led to the death of masses, both military and civilian, throughout the war. In 1870, on average, a mere 94 million euros was going into armaments across these countries annually. However, by 1914, military expenditure had risen to 398 million euros. Furthermore, much of this expenditure was going into naval forces, particularly between Britain and Germany preceding the war, which denoted rising tensions and arose suspicion between the European powers for this competitive behavior, ultimately bolstering the idea that a war was coming. Thus, given these factors, we cannot go as far to say that militarism was the sole cause of the war, as imperialism and nationalism laid the premise for its advancement. However, with its rise, countries became more confident in their pursuits and were not in the least reluctant to go to war once opportunity presented itself. Therefore, absent the armaments race between these powers before the war, it is likely that fewer countries would have allowed themselves to get involved.
Creation of a unified Germany resulted in distrust between European nations and disturbed the balance of power. France, who already hated Germany due to France's loss to Prussia, formed an alliance with Russia. Germany, wary of the threat caused by having two of its rival nations on either side of it, strengthened their already existing alliance with Austria-Hungary. Once Archduke Franz Ferdinand was murdered, Russia supported Serbia's claim for Bosnian independence. However, when it became clear that Austria-Hungary were preparing to crush Serbia, Russia backed up the small Eastern European country. Both countries, however, were afraid of losing the attacks as great powers, and therefore declared war on each other.
Imperialism was a significant reason for World War I to take place. Colonialism is the point at which a nation expands their influence and riches by bringing extra regions under their control. It is the point at which one territory has control over other tinier nations. The scramble for Africa is one example of how imperialism prompted World War I. The scramble for Africa was the clashing of European nations to the African between the 1800s and the beginning of World War I. A few Europeans argued that by colonizing Africa they were likewise sending out human progress to a mainland which they viewed as undeveloped. It was a European obligation to go about as trustees of Africa until Africans were developed enough to administer themselves. In any case, colonization was actually determined by business intrigue.
Nationalism is defined as the strong belief that the interests of a particular nation-state are of primarily importance. Also, the belief that a people who share a common language, history, and culture should constitute an independent nation, free of foreign domination. During World War I, nationalism was used as a way to justify people going out to war by governments. Serbia, in particular, used the idea of not wanting to be ruled over by the Austria-Hungary Empire as a justification of assassinating the Archduke. This assassination was the first event that led up to World War I. In addition, nationalism was also used as a justification for an individual country's involvement in the war. For example, Britain in particular adopted the conventional patriotic view to justify their involvement in the war and to annul the idea that their involvement was futile. The conventional patriotic ideology relates to nationalism in that it sanctimoniously and ardently dictates that country and religion are matters of honor and integrity. And although no slight was directly made to Britain, they had to honor their alliance to Russia, who was in turn honoring their relation to Serbia. Therefore, not only is this evident of nationalism's influence in justifying and causing the war, but it also connotates the chain reaction caused by alliances, allowing for the majority of countries to join the war.